On Google, if you type India water, the auto suggestion is crisis. If you type India's groundwater, one of the suggestions is depletion. So India's groundwater depletion. You type India drinking water and Google suggests quality. We know by this that water is a problem area in India. In fact, during COVID, the requirement to wash hands regularly was just not possible for many as they just don't have the regular flowing tap water. Many studies speak about the dire effects of the scarcity of water in India. Water demand is supposed to exceed water supply in a few years. Up to 40% of the population may not have access to drinking water over the next 10 years. Niti Aayog, the government of India's policy think tank, noted in a report last year that many cities will hit day zero or 0 day in water, as they call it, if the rainfall continued in the same pattern. Why do we keep hearing about these problems? If India is technically a water surplus country, is it because of agriculture? Is it because of excess irrigation? Is it because of the overuse of groundwater? We also hear many corporates talk about the issue of availability of water as one of the biggest deterrents of them setting up new capacities in certain geographies. And above all that is climate change and the impact of climate change on water. To talk about the issues, the solution, and the opportunities around water, we have today with us Dr. Tushar Shah. Dr. Tushar Shah, an economist and public policy specialist, is an emeritus scientist of the International Water Management Institute, Colombo, and professor emeritus of the Institute of Rural Management, Anand. Over the past 35 years, Dr. Shah's main research interests have been in water institutions and policies in South Asia, a subject on which he has published extensively. His notable contributions have been in comparative analysis of groundwater governance in South Asia, China, and Mexico. In elucidating the human side of groundwater development, Shah learned from and collaborated with hydrogeologists of great merit and eminence to understand aquifers as ecosystems. Dr. Shah's work on the perverse nexus between energy subsidies and groundwater overexploitation in many countries has had a deep impact on groundwater governance, especially in India, where he lives and works. His policy research on groundwater governance won Dr. Shah Consultative Group of International Agricultural Research Outstanding Scientist Award in 2002. In 2014, the IWMI Tata program, led by Dr. Shah, was honored with the United Nations Water Award for his work on energy-water nexus. He was honored with the Distinguished Associate Award of International Association of Hydrogeologists in 2018. Dr. Shah, welcome.
Thank you.
Dr. Shah, we are, for this India Impact Challenge, we are talking about India being ground zero for climate change. Is India ground zero for issues related to water as well? How does climate change impact water? And what exactly are the larger issues surrounding water?
So I agree with you that India is actually a global basket case when it comes to water. And I think climate change is not really doing much to help because it's likely to make things worse. Actually, climate change is going to mean surprisingly a little more rain in most of peninsular India, about 2/3 of India below the Ganges. Yeah. But these larger volume of rainfall below in peninsular India as well as in Ganga basin is going to be far more irregular. It's going to come in larger rainfall events, larger but fewer rainfall events, and leading to much longer dry spells. Increased temperature is going to mean heightened demand for irrigating crops, especially during winter and summer. But the most important challenge will be of building up storage. You know that India receives all its rainfall in 100 hours of massive showers. And this is going to become even worse as time goes under climate change. We'll probably get all our rain even in fewer hours. This is going to mean that unless we have large storage of floodwaters of rain, uh,
Mm.
then we will not be able to take rabi and summer crops. Another important thing is that over the past 60, 70 years, the monsoon crop as the biggest crop of India has been replaced by rabi crop. Now we produce much more of agricultural output during winter and summer
Yeah.
than during monsoon. And this is going to further increase the importance of irrigation. So all this is going to mean we need to have much larger storage of water, storage in surface dams, but more importantly, storage below the ground in
Yeah.
aquifers.
Yeah.
Because India, which actually received or inherited one of the world's largest surface irrigation infrastructure at the time of independence, has today become the world's largest user of groundwater. Farmers use about 2.5 crore private tube wells to pump groundwater to water their crops every year. And
Mm.
this makes India not only the largest user of groundwater in the world, but our annual draft of groundwater exceeds that of US and China together. These are two next largest users of groundwater. But we use more groundwater than both those countries put together. So I think that our main principal water challenge is in managing groundwater, and this is getting worse by the day under the influence of climate change.
So you spoke about groundwater and the depletion of groundwater, uh, aquifers not getting recharged. We've read about bore wells in some cities going as 500, 600, 700 feet below the ground. There are already large cities which depend on tanker water for the daily use. How much of this is related to bad development, bad planning, bad management, which then also means that these are kind of solvable issues. Do you agree with that? And if they are solvable, what are the things that are happening in the ground?
So I think it's actually partly a question of malgovernance of the economy of a resource, and partly it's also the stage of economic development at which India is poised. I think there are countries which are far worse water resource endowments, but are able to support a
Yeah.
much better water service system. Singapore is one example. There are many other countries which have much lower water resource endowment than we have, but they are able to manage and govern their water resource much better. But improving water resource management, improving the water service management, water infrastructure management, all of this costs money. And there are so many people who are dependent on water services who are so poor that they cannot afford the cost of a high quality water governance service. So partly I think it's the poverty that keeps our water crisis very severe. But partly it's also, I think, with the same level of income, okay, at the same stage of economic development, it is possible for us to do a better job of managing water infrastructure, water services, and water resource. So I agree with you that although we have a crisis, I
Yeah.
think that in the times to come, with better governance and with more intelligent approach to water resource management, uh, we should be able to improve our water situation. And the biggest scope for this actually occurs not so much in towns and cities where it's pure infrastructure management, but in agriculture, which is the elephant in the room. That's the one which has the largest claim of water resource. And I think in the times to come, agriculture will have to shade more water by becoming more water productive, release more water for cities, for industries, and for commercial uses.
Uh, uh, in your work and in your studies and your research, do you see innovations in water usage? Like, are you seeing technologies or awareness where agriculture is using lesser water? Are there any test cases for good governance in local municipal bodies, or or done by corporates or by NGOs? If you can share a few of those.
So I think there are, I mean, there is a lot that India is a large country, and I think water issues are issues that bother people, municipalities, local governments. It bothers corporates. It bothers. But I think that a lot of what is happening in the water sector is governed by or is driven by the concern, by the all-round concern for reducing agrarian stress. I mean, what's happening in the country today?
Yeah,
You see that's when small farmers come under stress, then they put such high political pressure on the system that decision making tends to get swayed by
yeah,
their. But I think that there is a great deal more that has happened in India to improve water conservation, to increase the availability of water, than in managing the demand.
okay,
We know that at least 30 to 35% of water use in Indian agriculture
mm,
is wasteful, in the sense that if we reduce water use in agriculture by 30 to 35%, we will not have a single kilogram of reduction in agricultural output. It's just because we do not have systems of economizing on water use. But still, there is not much that is happening except promoting micro irrigation and drip irrigation through subsidies. Other than that, we don't see much happening on demand management. But on increasing water supply and water availability
yeah,
to farmers and to rural consumers, a great deal is happening, I think, by NGOs, by foundations, by donors, even by corporates, and certainly by government. The continued investment in canal irrigation and in providing farmers subsidized electricity to pump groundwater. These are very powerful policies that not only increase availability of water to farmers, but on the other hand also intensify a water crisis.
uh, we deal with large foreign investors, and we've known that the global pension funds, the sovereign wealth funds, the multilateral agencies, they do invest in water and allied water activities, like water pipelines and water infrastructure, water treatment. Uh, do you see them playing a big role in India as well? India, as you said, is a big country. There's a big opportunity. And if yes, given there has to be a risk and a return for any private investor, what are the areas where you think large long-term pools of capital can come and make a difference in solving the water problem and also helping the entire society?
So I think the opportunities will probably be different in the immediate run, in the medium term, and in the longer term.
Okay.
And I think one of the most limiting feature will be the ability of the average customer to pay. So, for example, large infrastructure solutions which would work in say Southeast Asian countries, would probably work here, but it'll require large amount of subsidization by the government.
Government.
But if we are talking about investments that can become financially sustainable just on consumer payment, then the opportunities are less. But I think India will continue to be a big customer of small scale irrigation equipments, of private irrigation equipments,
Right.
of new technology like solar. I think solar irrigation pumps are rewriting the rules of irrigation in Indian agriculture. So I think this kind of technologies would have a massive impact. There are also big opportunities in water harvesting and decentralized groundwater recharge. 2/3 of India, almost all peninsular India, has hard rock aquifers. and hard rock aquifers are ideal for
Yeah.
watershed treatment, for water conservation, and decentralized groundwater recharge. Actually, in the past, local investors, capitalists, cement factories, have played a very important role in many parts of India in promoting and supporting such local community-based groundwater recharge programs. Actually, Saurashtra region of Gujarat is has over the past 20 years, it has seen witnessed a groundswell of community-led, groundwater recharge programs. And this is now spreading in Maharashtra, in Rajasthan, in Telangana, and in many other parts of hard rock India. India is there is a vertical divide. The eastern parts of India, they are very well endowed. The Ganga Basin and the states like Bihar, coastal Orissa, most of West Bengal, Assam, Eastern UP, they have very large endowments of water. But Western India is highly water stressed, and it is here that you find a lot of these water conservation programs going on. And here we find partnership between local communities, farmers, and investors to improve groundwater availability, to modernize irrigation practices, and in general to increase water productivity in agriculture.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shah. I don't know whether you saw, but the first water futures, commodity futures on water got launched in the US. And, so there'll be now a market price for water. How do you see that in India? It's such a tricky and political and the socio-political issue, like pricing of water and charging for water. And how do you see that happening? And is it a good trend? Is it a good beginning?
So I think that this would have great implications for countries like US, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, in countries in the new world where the number of water users or water using entities is smaller and the average ticket size is bigger. Let's take, for example, Australia, where the total number of farmers is much smaller, but the average farm size is much larger. So in Australia, almost every farmer, or every water user is registered, is under the government's system of monitoring. There is within Australia there is a water market that is working, and that water market works at a basin level. That is, you can transfer water from water surplus basins to water scarce basin through water trade. So I think in those kinds of settings, where almost all water users are registered and they are part of a trading network, I think it would begin to influence them. Not only in India, but I think throughout Asia, at least in the agriculture sector, in towns and cities where municipalities or
Yeah.
municipal agencies are the big, managers of water, there this would probably have some impact. But when it comes to agriculture, which is the biggest user, the market is so informal and so fragmented that market for the water resource will remain far less influential than the market in water service. In India also, in rural India, we have a water market, but it's kind of fragmented village scale water market, and it's more a market in water service than in water resource. I don't think that this new initiative would really have much impact on the agricultural water economy.
Dr. Shah, I have one last question on. So the government, the Modi government has announced that Jal Shakti Abhiyan, which is to provide tap drinking water to the entire population. That's a big commitment and it's a big exercise. How do you see that playing out? And with that, is it going to solve the problem of water availability and demand, or is it going to make it worse? How do you see that playing out?
So I think it's going to take quite some time before we can actually completely solve the rural water supply problem. But I think that the Modi government's initiative reflects or it represents the correct. I think we are in the right on the right direction. But I don't think just connecting households with taps is going to make sure that it's going to improve water availability. It will happen as long as there is water at the source.
Exactly.
Problem in most Indian villages is water security at the source. If there is secure water availability at the source, then water will come in the tap. But unless there is water in the source, then so I think that it's a move in the right direction. But we must moderate our expectations from how much this can achieve. Also, the past programs in drinking water and sanitation programs have seen that as long as there is pressure on the on implementation from the government, you keep on improving the record. But the slippages start very fast, and after 4 or 5 years, you find that villages which had very secure regimes, they kind of have slipped out, and then again, so it's kind of taking one step forward, but and going 2 steps backward, kind of. It's a Sisyphus kind of a situation.
Dr. Shah, thank you so much for joining us today. I think from what I hear from you, there are solutions and there are options. There is a crisis, but I think there are solutions and options available. And I personally feel there is a big role for private investment and private money to play a part in solving India's water crisis. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Arvind.